Many passages of the New Testament mention the brothers and sisters of Jesus. Contrary to what many might think, this topic is not a taboo, especially since all four Gospels speak of it on different occasions. Let's look at some examples. The most famous passage is perhaps from Mark, chapter 3, where it is said that Jesus' brothers went looking for him because they thought he had gone completely mad. This passage is repeated almost verbatim in both Matthew and Luke. And his mother and his brothers came, and standing outside they sent to him and called him. And a crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, "Your mother and your brothers are outside, seeking you." Mark 3 verses 31 to 32. The evangelist Mark mentions them again almost word for word in Matthew, when describing the first reaction of the people of Nazareth to Jesus' preaching. "Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary and brother of James and Joses and Judas and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us? And they took offense at him." Mark 6 verse 3. But even the Gospel of John openly speaks about them, particularly after the story of the wedding at Cana. After this he went down to Capernaum with his mother and his brothers and his disciples, and they stayed there for a few days. John 2 verse 12. The same brothers reappear later in John, chapter 7, where we witness a true family argument. This time, the brothers urge Jesus to reveal himself openly in Jerusalem during the great feast of Sukkot, to win over the favor of the crowds gathering in the holy city. Jesus disagrees and shows a much more cautious approach. Jesus' brothers said to him, "Leave Galilee and go to Judea, so that your disciples there may see the works you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you are doing these things, show yourself to the world." For even his own brothers did not believe in him. John 7 verse 3 to 5. Beyond the Gospels, the Acts of the Apostles mention Jesus' brothers as part of the early Christian community gathering in prayer. Paul also refers to them in two of his letters. In one instance, he states that he deliberately chose not to marry or bring a wife along in his travels, unlike Peter and, indeed, Jesus' brothers, see 1 Corinthians 9 verse 5. In another, he mentions James, calling him the brother of the Lord, at the beginning of his letter to the Galatians. So, yes, Jesus had brothers, and we even know their names. We also know that one of them, James, became the bishop of the Church of Jerusalem, though we know little to nothing about his sisters. Naturally, this raises a spontaneous question. Did Mary, the mother of Jesus, give birth to other children? The belief in Mary's perpetual virginity, that is, the idea that after Jesus, Mary had no other children, has been expressed by Christian writers since the 2nd century and was a deeply held conviction for most Christians. It was ultimately formulated definitively at the Second Council of Constantinople in 553. Contrary to popular belief, the Protestant Reformation did not change its stance on this matter. Not only Martin Luther but also other major reformers like Zwingli and, later, John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, upheld both the traditional belief in Mary's conception without human intervention and her lifelong virginity, even after Jesus' birth. This belief had been widely shared by both the Eastern and Western churches for at least 1,500 years. Today, we can find three different interpretations of the brothers of Jesus issue. The first, dating back to Tertullian, seems the most obvious. Jesus had biological brothers and sisters, meaning they were of the same blood. This view is now held by several scholars, particularly in the Protestant world. The second, which I personally find very compelling, was supported by notable figures like Eusebius and Gregory of Nyssa. It suggests that they were indeed his brothers in every sense but not from the same mother, essentially, children from a previous marriage of Joseph or adoptive siblings who joined the family later. This theory aligns with the fact that ancient families were not structured the way they are today, as small nuclear units, father, mother, and children. Instead, they were large, extended communities where multiple couples shared food, living spaces, and often even the upbringing of children. In such a context, it was common to refer to cousins and other relatives as brothers and sisters. The third theory was proposed by St. Jerome, the most famous scholar of Hebrew and Greek texts and the great translator of the Latin Bible. He argued that Jesus' brothers should be understood simply as cousins or close relatives. His main argument was linguistic. The words for brother in Hebrew and Greek can also mean cousin. Moreover, Mary, the mother of Jesus, had a sister who bore the same name. As you can see, the different perspectives depend on their underlying assumptions. The reason is simple. The words brother and sister have a very broad semantic range in all languages, not just in Hebrew and Greek. For instance, in Hebrew, the word ach, brother, appears in the Bible not only to indicate a biological brother but also to mean a close relative, a fellow citizen, a compatriot belonging to the same Israelite community, or even a co-religionist. Similarly, in Greek, adelphos, brother, has an expansive meaning both in classical Greek literature and in the Septuagint translation of the Bible. Plato, for example, referred to his fellow countrymen as adelphoi, brothers, and Plotinus used it to describe all living beings. Even today, in modern cultures, we use brother in multiple ways. So, to conclude, regardless of your personal beliefs, if we use a forensic expression, which works well for those of us obsessed with TV series, we cannot state beyond a reasonable doubt that the word brother exclusively and always means a biological sibling rather than simply a relative or close kin. As for me, I believe that for the earliest Christian communities, this issue was not as crucial. But the conviction that Jesus had no blood brothers spread very early among Greek-speaking Christians. This wouldn't have been possible if the word had a single, clear-cut meaning in everyday language. Words carry multiple meanings, and we often assign them different interpretations. In short, on many subjects, no one can claim to have the final word. Almost everything depends on faith. For those like me who profess the Catholic faith, this conclusion is not distressing but enlightening. This, in fact, is a typical case where tradition helps us interpret Scripture. But we'll talk more about that another time. Take care, everyone.